Hello everyone, this is Miss Kate from UMACO. I hope everyone is doing well, staying healthy and staying safe, and I really hope that you enjoy this lesson. So today we're going to be focusing on sighted contours, botanical studies, and of course we're going to be looking at the intricacies of plant shapes and plant movement. So I want you to make sure that you watched your previous video with Mrs. McEwen about blind contour and studying pine cones because they have really similar ideas in how we portray our own perception of things and how we look at things and how we observe the subjects that we've set ourselves forth with. So for this week, we're going to be making sighted contours of growing plants. So now, this is a specific method of rendering where you look at your subject, you create specific and observational drawings without picking up your pen at all. So this basically means your form lines and your texture lines in your piece are going to be connected, and it's going to be a pretty much fluid movement of your writing utensil or your drawing utensil. So we will also be going back over this ink drawing with paint in the next video, so we can watch that with me again. Hi. Alright, so before we get into our own art making activity and our own lesson, I wanted to go through some examples in art history of how people dealt with portraying plants because they can be very, very hard to understand and look at sometimes. You know, each plant is very, very unique, and that can sometimes read as foreign to us just because they're all so individual. Where I'm going to briefly be going into some scientifically accurate botanical drawings as well as some Matisse artwork and beadwork surrounding plant life and animal life. And then we'll get right into our lesson. Okay. So this is an example of botanical illustration done by Maria Sibylla Merian, who was a German naturalist and scientific illustrator in the 17th and 18th century. So what I want you to notice about these paintings or figures in particular is that they're very, very well observed. She made these paintings from life. She went into her field and examined not only plants, but bugs and other smaller creatures such as frogs and how they interacted, and a lot of her illustrations kind of show this relationship. So it's very focused on observing what the plant, not only how it looks, but how it behaves and interacts with other things, and it shows a really familiar relationship between the artist and the subject, and that's exactly what I want you guys to be doing when we make our own drawing. Alright, so this is our Matisse artist, Christy Belcourt. So she makes these very large-scale botanical paintings that are largely inspired by Matisse and other First Nations beadwork. As you can see, she creates very complicated images with a lot of moving parts and a lot of individual plant and animal life. So, although this may read as kind of a groundless background, we still feel this very articulated sense of movement that is very individual to each of the plants that she depicts. So as you can see, there's individual arcs that are reciprocated on either side, but basically remain pretty unique to each of the plants that she's depicting. And right here is that sense of familiarity that you can kind of tell also in 19th century botanical drawings. It's this sense of knowing your subject and having an existing relationship between those things. Examining a lot of other Matisse artwork and specifically beadwork, we can also see this individuality within plant depictions. You know, they're treated as a specific subject with specific movement even without a ground or a sense of ground. There's actually a specific example that I want to bring up because it's so relevant in today's climate. There's this wonderful example of Matisse beadwork on a face mask that was done by Lisa Shepard, who's also a Matisse artist, and within this we can see that sense of movement and familiarity with natural plant forms. And I really want to focus on that aspect while we move into our own observation with drawing and later color. Alright, so getting back to our own assignment, I'm going to get into what materials you will need for this part of our sighted contour lesson. So, first and foremost, you're going to need a sturdy piece of paper. Not everyone has drawing or watercolor paper at home, so that's completely okay if you just have a regular piece of paper. But if you have a thicker piece over a thinner piece, go for the thicker piece. And the big-ish, the better. Just, I think around this size is good, but of course, you know, it depends on what you have at home, and it really doesn't matter too much. You're going to need a pen or a marker. Really, you just need to aim to have a writing instrument that you can't erase is the big thing. So a pen or a marker. So most importantly, you're going to need your subject. So I have my example of my subject. So here's this, and here's my drawing. I picked a houseplant that I wanted to look at for a long period of time, basically. Something that was interesting, that had a really fun sense of movement. He comes forward and then goes out. It's really cool. But if you don't have a houseplant, I get that. Luckily, it's April and we can go out for walks. There will be plenty of sprouters. You see a lot of the beginning April flowers. You can go out, snap a picture. They've got a really lovely sense of movement. They're going up towards the sun. So yeah, you can just snap a picture of one of those if you don't have a houseplant that you can study for a bit. In terms of composition, what we want from our paper and our general setup is, I want you to touch with your plant, with your rendering, 3 out of your 4 sides on your piece of paper, or 3 out of your 4 corners. Now this can be any orientation, it can be any corner or any side that you want. It absolutely does not matter. Just I want it to be big and I want it to be expansive and have an interesting composition where it touches a lot of the outside of the paper. All right, so I think it's time to get to it. And remember, do not pick up your pen. The first thing you want to get down on paper is the general sense of space that you're getting from your general plant. So you want to go in with your form first and really just grow outward from a certain place where you start. Because again, you can't pick it up, so you need to start somewhere around the middle, and you just want to spread out, getting the general sense of space. You're going to want to have your plant seem pretty big in terms of scale, just because we do want to hit those 3 corners and really spread out and make an interesting asymmetrical composition. Now, one very hard part of sighted contour is nailing your ellipses. So an ellipse is basically a rounded geometric shape that has to lie down and be warped by your perspective. So that means, you know, the top of a pot, for example. It's really hard to get those to lay down and look like they're intermingling with your plant, essentially. Now, because you can't pick up your pen, you know, ellipses will be very difficult. So I think it is okay at this point, if you have drawn the plant, for instance, in one motion, it's okay to pick up your pen a little bit to maybe adjust or figure out your ellipses. Also, I included a video link in the description box that you can click on, and someone else gives you a tutorial on how to draw ellipses depending on the perspective. Once you've pretty much got the structure of what you want to do down, it's totally okay to go in and start making texture marks. Now, you can run over lines that you've already drawn, like your form lines. That also helps just up the contrast of your general drawing, but feel free to really loop around your drawing and add texture where you see it, you know. For example, right away I actually put in the veins of my plant leaves, just because I thought it would be good form to get down first. But other than that, I go in and I really squiggle in some of the rougher areas of their stems, and of course I do some texturing on the edge of the pot as well.